Steam Deck released in 2022, and then in 2023 we got a Steam Deck refresh. The ROG Ally released in 2023, and I've got to say that in some ways the MSI Claw is looking a lot like a 2024 refresh of the ROG Ally, and I think that's amazing. But just like with the ROG Ally, we do have to be a bit cautious with previews. There are a lot of marketing claims being thrown around, and for the most part, these claims are being looked at uncritically. To be fair, this is not a judgment on the journalists that are covering the MSI Claw, but I feel strongly that it would be helpful to look at the ways a tech company can manipulate the coverage, especially for a device that is still a month or so away from release. Unfortunately for me, there's always the chance that this sort of video ruins my odds at getting a review unit, but as usual, I'm okay with that proposition. I'm not owed a review unit, and I don't want a review unit that comes at the cost of my honesty. Still though, I give MSI the benefit of the doubt, and honestly, it seems more reasonable to assume that they'd never seen my video in the first place or even know who I am. All the same, I will purchase the MSI Claw myself if I don't get a review unit, and I will give you my honest appraisal of the device once I have it in my hands. In any case, before I go into the previews, let's quickly run down what we learned in those previews. There are 3 models for the MSI Claw that should be available sometime in February or March, more likely March. For $699, you get a Core Ultra 5 with 512GB of storage and 16GB of RAM. For $749, you get a Core Ultra 7 155H, also with 512GB of storage and 16GB of RAM. Finally, for $799, you get the same 155H with 1TB of storage and still 16GB of RAM. That means there is no model with 32GB of RAM, as we were sort of led to believe during the leak. Also, the drive is a 2230, so it should be pretty straightforward to replace. The Claw is so called for its ergonomic benefits. Essentially, they took the ROG Ally's basic design and made the grips more substantial. There's a lot of ventilation, like literally all over, and that's good because this appears to be an APU that has a different power envelope to the AMD handhelds. It doesn't appear to hit its stride until you feed it more power, and according to Dave2D, performance at 30 watts compares to the Ally's performance at 25 watts. There's a 53 watt-hour battery, 7-inch 1080p LCD screen with 500 nits peak brightness. VRR is not available, but they are still investigating whether or not it's going to be included by launch. We'll talk about that. The I/O seems straight out of the ROG Ally mold, including an SD card slot right at the top and a dual fan design. This is also the first handheld with Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4, and it's the first handheld from a major distributor that has both Hall sensor analog sticks as well as Hall sensor triggers. So with that, let's take a look at the ways MSI have manipulated circumstances, just like other tech companies do, in order to make sure that the MSI Claw gets the most positive coverage possible. So I watched every video I could find and also read some articles too, and there's one term that showed up in I think every single post, and that was engineering sample. All of the journalists wanted to stress that these were engineering samples and that a lot of the details being discussed were subject to change. Now, the fact that all the journalists were evaluating engineering samples meant a few things, but one of the most important things that caught my eye were some unavailable features. The biggest feature that was unavailable but marketed to at least some degree was variable refresh rate. To be fair to MSI, they did not say that VRR will absolutely be available on the MSI Claw, but they did say they are looking into it. And it should be noted here that the MSI Claw is set to release in February or March, according to MSI, and while it is plausible that they are still working on VRR, that sort of specification is something that I would expect to be finalized by now. Let me give you a related example that comes to mind with the Lenovo Legion Go. During the initial reveal of the Legion Go, some people noted that the engineering samples there were using portrait displays. One of the Lenovo engineers in the Lenovo forums pointed out that although the early samples were using portrait displays, the final products would be using landscape displays. That engineer turned out to be wrong. Now, I don't know what happened in the short time frame between when he made this claim and when the Lenovo Legion Go was ultimately released, but the Legion Go ended up launching with a portrait display despite his pre-release protests to the contrary. These sort of unavailable features present a dangerous proposition. A journalist is forced to report on the fact that an MSI rep is telling them that VRR may be in the ultimate product, but MSI themselves are hesitant to put a VRR bullet point in their official marketing materials, despite the product being a month or two away. Another similar feature is Wi-Fi 7. We learned that the MSI Claw sports Wi-Fi 7, a standard which was more or less officially launched at CES. To an extent, Wi-Fi 7 itself suffers from the same exact marketing problems that we're talking about here. Check this quote from an article on ZDNet that covers the launch of the Wi-Fi 7 certification project. The author says, "Our homes and offices will soon see speeds of, believe it or not, almost 5.8 gigabits per second. But then he immediately follows that by saying, actually, just between us, I don't believe Intel when it states a typical Wi-Fi 7 laptop will have a potential maximum data rate of almost 5.8 gigabits per second. So yeah, these are some lofty goals that currently can't really be proven. It's great that the MSI Claw will be Wi-Fi 7 capable. Even if the claims are a bit dubious, it stands to be a big improvement over Wi-Fi 6E, which itself has been impressive. It's got increased bandwidth, lower latency, the ability to spread across multiple frequency, and the ability to connect even more devices. But we won't be able to take advantage until we have a Wi-Fi 7 router. This is a marketing bullet point that MSI essentially gets to tack on for free without anyone knowing if this chip is a good Wi-Fi 7 chip or not. Again, I don't think there's anything that should have been done different here. I just think that this is something to be aware of. One of the biggest marketing points about the Core Ultra 7 155H and Meteor Lake in general are these NPUs, or neural processing units, that are on board. NPUs are focused on AI workloads, and as of right now, it feels like a solution in search of a problem. But that hasn't stopped Intel and MSI from advertising the AI capabilities of Meteor Lake chips, and the MSI Claw is no exception. Several outlets, including PC World, have even described this as the first handheld with an NPU. Additionally, one of MSI's bullet points for the Claw is their MSI AI engine, which adjusts various system settings automatically that best fit your needs. And I don't know a single preview that covers what this means or what it can actually do. When an Intel rep was asked about how NPUs could actually enhance the gaming experience on a handheld, he starts off with some more grounded use cases like facial recognition or gesture recognition, but he eventually goes on to describe a system that takes shitty animation as an input and outputs awesome animation. No, really. Have a listen.
Application of AI that we haven't seen yet would be animation augmentation, right? So imagine there's a lot of shitty animation in games today, right? And no judgment, but imagine that you take an AI and you put in relatively crappy animation and you get out lifelike human animation, right? That's free.
Interesting.
That's free.
Right.
You're welcome, Epic.
I like where you're thinking. I like it. Yeah.
That's right, Epic. You're welcome. The reason Tommy here can get away with describing this pie in the sky use case unchecked is because, as he says, we're still in the early days of discovering how NPUs will be helpful. So without actually knowing how NPUs will eventually be helpful, Tommy Boy can just make something up and say, wouldn't it be wonderful if we fed something pixel art and out came high poly 3D models? Tom was asked how NPUs could be helpful in the MSI Claw, and he took that question and remixed it. Instead of answering the original question, he answered a question of how AI could be helpful in gaming one day. Another tool that is utilized here to receive the best possible coverage is the concept of multiple models. This gives MSI the best of both worlds because they're strongly advertising the lowest price of $699 while strongly focusing on the benefits of the Core Ultra 7 that you don't get in the lowest model. You need to cough up at least an extra $50 to get the performance being showcased on the show floor. Personally, I don't find that to be a small difference in price, specifically because $699 is the price of the ROG Ally and the Lenovo Legion Go. The Core Ultra 5 version of the MSI Claw will not compete with these handhelds, and so MSI loses price parity with the Ally and the Go despite being a direct competitor. Journalists have done a great job of covering this discrepancy, but it's unclear if the Core Ultra 5 version of the Claw will even be a viable model, or if it exists simply so that MSI can say starting at $699. This happened with the ROG Ally too. They heavily advertised that the ROG Ally started at $599 because you could either buy the Z1 Extreme model or eventually you could purchase the ROG Ally with the base Z1 APU. Unfortunately, the disparity in performance between the base Z1 and the Z1 Extreme is so large that it effectively makes the $599 ROG Ally useless to the PC handheld market, and I have some concerns that the Core Ultra 5 MSI Claw will suffer the same fate. What do you think? Am I being too hard on this APU here? One more tool in MSI's toolbox is an obvious one. They were able to make big claims that went unchecked because the journalists covering the Claw didn't have access to things that would help them prove or disprove those claims. Even the performance overlay didn't show the FPS. They made a conscious decision to not let journalists see the frame rate. And I'm not going to sit here and say that that's because they were trying to hide bad performance. That would be a huge leap. I think the basic reasoning for not having frame rate available to measure is that drivers are not final, firmware is not final, even the VRR spec isn't final. In that way, displaying the frame rate would likely cause more trouble than it's worth, so I get it. I also have to give MSI a lot of credit for not making really big claims about the performance of the MSI Claw. They made a lot of claims about battery life and efficiency, but not about performance. About those battery life claims. Like I said, I watched every video I could find and I saw a lot of interesting claims. In the official marketing materials, they said things like best-in-class battery life and power that lasts 50% longer. I think these claims were mostly drawn from comparisons to the ROG Ally, but it is intentionally vague. Like, wouldn't best-in-class battery life imply that the MSI Claw is claiming to have even more battery life than the Steam Deck OLED? 50% longer battery life is one that I can't wait to test for myself. Compared to the ROG Ally, the battery in the MSI Claw is about 33% bigger in terms of capacity. That means if the Claw was exactly as efficient as the Ally, assuming that's the device they're testing against, then the Claw would have 33% longer battery life simply based on the capacity. So for it to have 50% more battery life would mean that it's even more efficient than the Ally, and that leaves me with so many questions. Like, at what TDP? Is performance still similar to the Ally at that TDP, or are you testing at such a low TDP that the Ally actually has the advantage in terms of performance? Then, if you watch the videos, there was one number that kept coming up: 2 hours minimum battery life. In Linus Tech Tips video, Linus said 2 hours at full bore, 35 watts. But other videos said 2 hours while playing Forza Horizon 5 at 15 watts. The latter seems to line up better with some of the stats I could manage to get a sneak peek of. For example, in one video I could see that at a TDP of 20 watts, the total system power was at 35 watts. That would give you about 1.5 hours at 20 watts, so you could see how 2 hours at 15 watts sounds plausible. To be honest, if you take all of the above, I have to say that I think MSI managed to keep their claims somewhat reasonable. They admitted that VRR may not make it in, they didn't make a big deal about Wi-Fi 7 or NPUs, although those are pet topics for Intel, and they were clear about pricing. I couldn't find any really boastful claims about performance, and although I'm quite dubious of the battery life claims, it does seem like 2 hours at 15 watts is at least plausible. That all puts my mind at ease because while I do still worry about how Intel can compete with AMD in this field, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited to see more and more handhelds. The fact that Intel, AMD, Asus, Lenovo, and MSI all see potential in this market is reassuring. Nevertheless, I think it's worthwhile to keep expectations in check. There's a lot we won't know about the Claw until we have our hands on it and can test it without restriction. Let me know what you think though. Are you more or less excited about the Claw than you were before the previews? That gang out. Goodbye!